Cool. All right. Well, today we're gonna. This is a test for my Twitch channel. I'm new to this, so I'm gonna test out all the tools, make sure everything is working good. But we're also just gonna start going through the demo, and we got a half an hour to go through as much as we can. But we're talking about facial animation for video game cinematics, cut scenes. Um, so what we do is, if you see my screen here, let me close the graph editor. So what we do is we bring in a facial rig, which is separate than the actual rig. That way we can just focus on the facial features. This is called an HMC over here, head mount camera, that we get from the actors. If we're lucky, we get the actors as they're actually acting it out. That works best than them trying to do. Sometimes clients will redo the voice later, and so then you'll get different acting on the face that hopefully matches with the body. But but this is great to have, and the program we're using is called FaceWare Retargeter, and so we're going to have to go to turn it on. We go to our plugin manager. I don't have it set to auto load just because I've had issues with it before. So I just go to plugin manager, search for retargeter. So I am retarget Maya. Load it up, close that, and then we get this FaceWare thing in the menu. So we come down, FaceWare Retargeter. I'm doing a free trial. They have a 30-day free trial if you want to try it out for yourself, which I highly suggest. But then they have, subscription models. They have cheaper subscriptions for indie people who are just learning it and trying to get better. Some of the schools that you go to, online schools, can possibly get you discounts as well, so you can look into that. So this is Retargeter, and what we'll do is we'll open up a performance. The performance is actually like tracking data. So there is a different software by FaceWare called FaceWare Analyzer, and what it does is it goes in, and there's an animator that kind of controls it. The animator will go in and help track the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and the brows. So it kind of helps Analyzer understand where those features are at any given time. And so the animator can go in and troubleshoot it and make it look as clean as possible. So then that data that we get from Analyzer gets put and brought into Retargeter. So that's the data that we're going to open up here. So I already did all the analyzing, just because that's a whole different topic and tutorial where we can go through how to do that some other time, but this is more of the fun stuff. So I wanted to get into this FaceWare Retargeter. So we'll open that up. You also have to create a character setup file, which is pretty much just telling it what are the controls on your rig, and do you want which controls are the brows, which are the eyes, which are the mouth, and so forth. So we're just going to go ahead and open up the data, load it up. Okay, just say okay to that. So now we have brows, eyes, and mouth. All right, and so I usually start with the eyes. And the reason why we use this tool, it's not mocap. So, people might think, oh, you just mocap the face. It's not mocap, it's tracking data that really helps with the in-betweens. Because as you'll see here, I'll scroll through, I'll scrub through it. There's no animation on this character at all, even though the data's there. So it's not going to do anything until I tell it what are the poses that it needs to know. And then it makes its best guess as to the in-betweens and all that kind of stuff based on the data. So I start with the eye direction. And usually you kind of want to go through and find a neutral, like maybe where she's looking straight ahead, like this one. Maybe this pose here, we can say add. And I'll just say, I'll name it neutral. All right, and then you say update, because let's say it's not exactly neutral. So what I'll do is I'll grab the controls for the eyes, and I mostly animate when I'm doing it this way in the channel box. So it's a little different than maybe what you're used to. But if you highlight translate X, which is left and right on the eyes, then you come over into the screen and middle mouse drag So I click middle mouse and I drag left and right. The eyes move. So all that's doing is changing the values in the channel box. And then if it's moving too fast, usually what I like to do, and I'd like to turn off the manipulators so I don't accidentally drag that. They're not in the way. So you just click this a couple times so that the manipulators are off. So now you see they don't show up. And then this is the speed of the drag. So let's say it's too fast. You can keep cycling through this and you see how it's full, slow, medium, almost full, and then full. So I like kind of the second click there, the medium. And then you can kind of fine tune your dragging a little bit more. So in this HMC, she's slightly looking left and maybe slightly looking up. So it's not exactly center, so we're going to go. It doesn't have to be exact for right now, but I try to get it as close as possible. A lot of times what you do when you're trying to match, because you'll see the camera's so close to the eyes that the eyes sometimes look like they're looking in different directions. So like this one, screen left eye is kind of looking to the left, but the screen right eye looks like it's straight at us. Right? Hey, awesome. Just had an alert. Sweet. Awesome. Hi there. Thanks for joining us. All right, so the eyes, like I said, the screen left one looks a little bit far left and the screen right one is almost center. What you do is you try to picture where they're looking at in the room, and then try to get it that way. So it looks like she's looking slightly up and slightly left. And so then I'll just look at the rig and be like, all right, she's slightly left, slightly up. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then you hit update in Retargeter. So now Retargeter has that value saved on that frame. And then we just scrub through to find an extreme. So that was like our neutral frame. I'm going to find extreme when she's looking screen left. And you can frame by frame. So this looks like extreme screen left. So I'm going to add a key there. And I'm just going to say screen left. And then we pose it. So, I'll click on translate X in the channel box, middle mouse drag left all the way. So this is as far as this rig goes. I wish it could go further, but that's as far as the rig goes. So that's all the way screen left. And it looks like she might be slightly looking down. You kind of look at the angle of the, the oval of the eye, because it's not exactly a full circle. You can kind of see if it's angled a little bit. So we're just going to come down slightly and then go ahead and update. So now we got extreme screen left. We're going to look for screen right. She kind of looks screen right there. I don't know if that's not totally extreme, so I'm just going to add it, but we'll come back to it. So that's a possibility. Oh, there's a good one. Frame by frame till it's the most extreme. You're looking for the extremes here. So let's add this one. This one is screen right. We can delete this one because you don't want too many keys. The idea in using Retargeter is the fewest amount of keys possible to make it look right, because Retargeter just gets you about 70%, 80% of the way there, and then the last 20-30% is you going into the graph editor, adjusting things, adding animation layers, and you can make it look as good as you want it to look. You can push poses. You can, try to really sell the emotion of the actor and all that kind of stuff. So it's like you're not stuck. That's why it's great that it's not exactly mocap, because you're not stuck to the performance. You can kind of make it however you want, but Retargeter gets you there. Because I could even change some of the performance while I'm retargeting it using the data from Analyzer. But yeah, if you showed up late, Analyzer is another program by FaceWare where an animator goes in and tracks the features. An animator will tell the program, on this frame, kind of like what we're doing now. On this frame, the eye's here, the brows are here, the mouth is here, the nose is here. An Analyzer then creates all that data and brings it into Retargeter so that as we're putting in extreme poses, and Retargeter can kind of fill in the gaps, and then we just kind of work with the program and really try to problem solve to make it look the best. All right, so we've got, if you double click these guys, you can skip to the frames. So we have our screen right eye frame. So let's go ahead and grab this and go as far as we can, screen right. And she's looking up a little bit, so we'll go translate Y. We're middle mouse dragging, slightly up. You know, right now we're not worrying about eyelids and all that kind of stuff. We can adjust that later. Hit update. Now that we have 3 keys, it's usually you want at least three keys to actually hit retarget and see kind of what the program comes up with. So let's hit retarget. So it's going to take those 3 keys that we gave it, and it's going to frame by frame fill in the rest. And it's using the tracking data that we gave it before, and we'll just kind of scrub through and see. So you can see it's pretty much tracking her eyes. But there are some spots. So now that what we do next is to fill in extra keys, we just troubleshoot. What I'll do next is just try to find the most extreme thing that's happening in HMC that the rig isn't doing. And I'll add that as another key. And every time you add another key, I hit retarget. So this one, this little eye shift, in the HMC we can see her eyes are actually going up more than what the rig is doing. So what I'll do is I'll kind of frame by frame, as soon as her eyes get up to that extreme up pose, I'm going to add a pose there. I might call it, I'll just call it slightly up. Doesn't matter. You don't need to name all these. It's just to organize it for later if you want to jump back or if you want to compare. A lot of times I suggest you compare to neutral. That's why you make a neutral pose, because it can be like the game of telephone, where if you're not always comparing to neutral, you can get so far away from the neutral pose, and so all of your poses can kind of get off model if you're not too careful. So let's go ahead and raise her eyes up slightly here. And yeah, let's just leave it like that. Update. So we update and then we retarget. Nice. Let's see how that looked. So that was frame 190. So now we can see the eyes go up more. There. And whenever you make an adjustment like that, you want to make sure you didn't mess up any other area. So then you just kind of do the same thing. You just keep troubleshooting. Like right here, her eyes are slightly up and then they go up more. So I'm going to do a pose for the eyes going up more. Screen right up. So that's pretty much as far over to the right. We're going to go up more. And you can kind of compare by double clicking. So this one to this one. And I'm looking at the HMC to see the difference. Okay. So maybe we're not extreme screen right on the second one. So we want to come back just a little bit. Let's see if that change looks about right. It's close enough for now. So we hit update, we retarget again. So it's a lot of this, and for the eyes and the brows, there isn't as much that you have to do. But when you get to the mouth, that's when you can really get into the nitty gritty of it, and there's lots of poses that you can put in and really shape it the best you can. Because the idea is, with retargeter, you want to get it most of the way there. Because if the reason why we use this program is in video games, the cinematics are long. And when I was on God of War, there were some shots that were 10,000 frames long because there's no cuts on the cameras. And so you have such a long shot, there's no way you're going to hand key the entire thing and make it look top quality. So this is just a tool that we use to get us closer, and then we can go in and use our time more wisely to clean it up and make it look the best that it can in a short amount of time. Because there were some times where I had to do 10,000 frames in a week. I mean, that's impossible, right? But not with FaceWare Retargeter, it's possible. And it's still all your work. The rig started with no animation on it. You're just using data to help go between your poses, but you're posing the character, which is what I love about it. Not a lot of people know that this is mostly how it's done, which this is a great way to do it. Okay. So that's the eyes. I just want to ask you guys, do you guys have any questions? Let me see. What do we got here? Give me a second to look over the chat. Nice. Hello. So we have, as a facial animator, do you always get a still head rig, or do you ever get the body animation? Ah, that's a great question. Yes, and so a lot of times it's very helpful if they also give you the body animation. So what they'll do is they'll give you another camera that you can go to. Right now we just have face cam, which is, so if she was moving around with her body, this camera is constrained to her face. So no matter where she goes and moves, this view will always just be straight and flat. But the best is when they also give you a master cam, and then so that will have all of the body animation as well. So you can always go and check and see what the face is looking like to camera. But usually you don't want to animate to camera at this stage. At this stage, you want to mostly get it looking right from the face cam, because that's going to look the most natural. Then once you finish retargeting and now you're going into keyframe and you're adding in animation layers and stuff like that, you can go to the master cam file, or the master cam camera, and see how it reads to camera. Because a lot of times you're going to have to cheat, maybe cheat the mouth, or cheat something's not reading, and you're going to have to, or it's like, oh, that character's really far away, we're going to need to push that so that we can tell what's happening. Or that character's really close, so I need to spend more time on close-ups than I do on something far away. And so you look at how much time you have to work on the shot, and then you can prioritize by looking at the master cam. A lot of times I'll just look at the master cam and take notes and be like, okay, this frame range, they're close up. So I just write down those frame ranges so I know that's where I really have to focus. Because if you can better manage your time, it's going to be best for everybody. You don't want to spend too much time on a part of the face then you look at the master cam and the person is facing the other way. Sometimes you do, which is great about retargeter because it covers the entire range. So, because sometimes even when the character is looking the other way, you might be able to see part of their cheek moving, or there's a small feature that you can see even though they're looking the other way, and it just helps make it more believable and real. But let's say you only see a little bit of the left side of my face when the camera's behind me. I don't need to spend all this time polishing this side of the face because it's not seen, and so you really have to look at the master cam to figure it out. And I'm sorry I don't have one of those for this example. Maybe in the future I'll try to get one of those. So that is a great point. So thank you for that question. That was Jay Kaiser Anim. Sweet. What if you have a shaky camera? Yes, that is a big problem with this. FaceWare retargeting, it does its best to try to keep everything together, and it depends on the data that was collected in FaceWare Analyzer. That's where I would try to get rid of most of the jitters, is in creating the data in FaceWare Analyzer. But it's obviously not perfect. So if the actor is moving around a lot, you'll have the features also moving around a lot. So as you're retargeting, you don't worry about that too much. You can kind of leave in the jitters. Every once in a while, you might be able to move a feature as long as it doesn't ruin the rest of the shot. Because if you start putting in too many poses that are trying to adjust differently than where the data is, it can start to add more jitters in spots that were, still. So You just have to be careful with that. What I would suggest is just retargeting it, leaving in a lot of the jitters, not worrying about it. Then you can go in, once you're done with the retargeting phase, go into the graph editor and clean up the curves. You know, a lot of times what you can use, I use Animbot a lot, and there's the push pull tool. Um, let's see if this will pop up. Of course, my shortcut doesn't work. Anyways, there's the pull tool, which is in the green section here, PP, right here. And then, so you'll just grab the curves. Let's see if I can get some curves going here. So we can come into the graph editor here. If you highlight a section and hit F, it'll zoom in on that section. Hey, hey, welcome. So what we'll do is, let's just say this was all like really, really jittery. Here, I can make it jitter, I think. That's all right. Yeah, there. So let's say it's all like this, right? So you see this X. Let's just say that's the data we were given, and I need to clean that up. Instead of like deleting things and trying to smooth it out, when you're dealing with it's not mocap data but tracking data, you want to keep in as much of the realness as possible. And so what we usually do, and I don't know if you know this, you can highlight. If I want to not see the rest of these curves, I usually just click on a part of the curve I want to see. I right click and say isolate curve. Now I'm just working on that curve. And then I grab the section that needs to be cleaned up, and I use push pull here, and you can kind of drag back. All right, well, that's bringing everything down, you know, so maybe I want it to be up more, but that's fine. It kind of smoothed it out, but I left in a little bit of the movement, and then I can grab that whole section and move it back up, you know, so then it still feels real, but it smoothed it out more. And I wouldn't necessarily do that with the eyes. That's just all the data I have right now. That would be more for, I mean, the mouth, the brows. The brows get a lot of shake. So you definitely want to go through the brows and try to clean them up, push, pull, or you can scale them down. You know, use the scale tool and scale them down, and however you want to do it, right? So, but that's how you can clean up jitter, but that's more of in the phase after retargeter, right? So we finish retargeting, because once you start getting in and messing with the curves, it's harder to go back and retarget again. So you want to make sure that you are as far as possible along in retargeting. Then you can kind of just close this out, and now I'm animating, but I have data to work with. Right? Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So, so thank you. That was Tuna 21. We got Guava Gladiator. Have you ever had to push the character's facial performance to get it better appeal for games, or do you guys stick to the reference? So yes, a lot of times. Sometimes we'll be told from the client, you know, the actor didn't quite get the emotion we were looking for here, so can you make him look, you know, more scared or whatever it is. And so then, yeah, after all the retargeting is done, we've got what the actor did on the rig. I mean, we can do whatever we want. We can go in and delete some of the data if we want and just reanimate. There are parts when people are fighting, you know, if it's really strong action and people are fighting, there's parts where there's no data at all, because the head mount cam would just be all over the place, or it would be in the way of the characters interacting. So when there's fights and stuff, a lot of times we'll just have to go in and hand key that whole section, which is a lot harder to do, you know. And then but then it's up to us. We can record our own reference, video reference, you know, and then kind of use that, bring our own reference in and kind of get it that way. But yeah, there's lots of times where you know, maybe my supervisor or my lead will be looking at my shot and say, we need to push that, it's not reading well, we can't tell, I'm not feeling that emotion. Because a lot of times what the actor's doing and what the rig does, it doesn't always translate, because the rig might not be able to make the exact same face the actor made. And so you kind of have to then play with the rig and find out what feels like that emotion. It's all about reading the emotion, right? And so, um, luckily on God of War, a lot of times the actor, the rig was based on the actor, so it translated one to one a lot. But even then, we still had to push things because I mean, a rig just isn't a person, you know. And a lot of times with people, we can read just minute changes. You know, someone's barely smiling on a person, you can tell, but sometimes on a rig, you do it and it still doesn't read. So yeah, you definitely have to make adjustments like that a lot of times. And that's the fun part, right? After you get through, I think retargeting is fun too because I get to tell it what to do, and I like problem solving. I like trying to figure things out, and then letting the computer try to figure it out. And I'm like, no, computer, that's dumb. Don't do that. And then I give it another key and correct it, you know. And I'm still in control. But the program's definitely helping out a lot. But yeah, like I said, after you're done retargeting, you go into the curves. You can make some extra animation layers on different facial parts, facial features. You can make another layer that's just for style. So like if there's a certain thing the character always does, let's say that she always has this side of her mouth up, you know, and maybe the retarget didn't catch that as well. I can just have a layer where I just on one key move the mouth, this side of the mouth up, and then see how that reads. And then I can turn the weight on and off of that, just that one key, whenever I need her mouth on that side to go up more. And so that's really helpful too. That's a cool tip. All right, so thank you for that. We got, so kind of like use it mocap, get about 50 to 70% way there and manually clean it up. Yeah, and I hate to call it mocap because it's not, because it would be, as soon as you bring in the rig, there's no animation on it at all. And so the rig will not get any information unless there's an animator there telling it where to put the poses. So it's kind of a hybrid between hand key and mocap, but I'd hate to call it mocap because it's not at all. It is tracking. It's more like, I don't know if there's a good word for it. I mean, you know, FaceWare uses the word retargeter, but yeah, it's tracking info and helping you between the keys that you place is pretty much what it is. So I'm pretty much telling the computer when her mouth is like this, when these features are like this is the pose that I want, you know, and then it just takes those few keys and does in between. And it'll be more fun once we get into the mouth. I know the eyes were simple, but I only had a half an hour today just to try this out. And I thank you guys so much for being here and helping me try out these features and stuff. I'm realizing now that it doesn't really alert me when someone does something in the chat, so I'll need to figure out how to get an alert for that. But that helps me out a lot. And next week, I'm going to start doing the full streams of going through these things. We're going to do the eyes, we're going to do the brows, and we're going to do the mouth. And it's going to be great. And I'll try to put up a schedule on my Twitch channel so that you guys know when that's happening. I'll put it out on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and I'll let everybody know. But I think we got time for one more question. What do we got here? How many passes would you have on an animation? That's a good question. So if we only have a week to do a shot, and let's say it's this shot, right? So it's 500 and what is it? 532 frames. I only have, let's say production said you have a week to do this shot. I would like to get that turned in, I mean, as early as possible, so I have time to get notes. You know, the more iterations you get, the better it's going to be, right? And so I might say I'm going to take a day and a half to try to retarget this. You know, so I'll spend a day and a half getting the retarget as good as possible. I'll get notes on the retarget. What helps is if in your process you can have a lead that will help you get the retarget as good as possible before you jump into animation. And so probably a day and a half on retargeting. Maybe the rest of that day will be getting notes on retargeting. But then you've got 3 days to go in and polish it up. Um, so then I'll have like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now I'm gonna go in and play with the keys, some animation layers, and really get focus on the spots where the person's on camera and where especially close-ups. If someone's further away, not that it doesn't matter, but if you don't have time, it's like you prioritize. It's like if I get time to make that when they're far away look good, I will get to that at the end, but I'm going to start on the most important things. And each day, it depends on where you work and how busy your leads are, but each day I'd like to get feedback. So Wednesday, so let's say Monday and Tuesday was retargeting. Wednesday, I'll work most of the day and maybe towards the end of the day try to get some feedback so that Thursday I can start fresh, hit all those notes, and go again Thursday afternoon, turn it in, get some notes, and then Friday's the last day, right? And then it depends on the hierarchy too. Maybe you have a lead and then you have a supervisor, or maybe you have a lead and then you have a director that wants to look at it. And so you might have multiple phases of getting notes and stuff like that. But really, I love getting feedback because you don't want to spend too much time doing something that isn't right. Like you could spend a whole day working on something and then you get feedback and then they say, no, that was way off, right? So the more often you can get feedback, you don't want to be a pest. You don't want to slow down production. But if you have a lead that has the time to give you notes like daily, do it because it's going to make your work look better. And remember, it's about the client too. So a lot of times there might be something maybe you don't agree with what the lead says. The lead says, hey, take this part out. And you're like, oh, but that's so good. You have to do what the lead says because the lead knows more, has a relationship with the client, or has a relationship with the supervisor who has a relationship with the client. And they can better tell you what the client wants because ultimately that's all that matters. And so you kind of have to just throw out you might be able to say, I don't know, are you sure? Can we at least try this? And your lead might let you. But a lot of times it's just follow their direction and trust that they know what the client wants. And the thing is, you might get feedback from the client later, and the client will say, hey, can you do this? And you're like, hey, that's what I did in the first place. That's fine. You don't have to say I told you so. It's just it'll come back to you. And then that kind of gives you some confidence too, where you're like, hey, I had the right idea in the first place. Because leads aren't perfect. They're not the client. They don't know exactly what the client wants. So yeah, there's multiple iterations that you'll be able to go through, hopefully, on your production to get things the best possible, right? So awesome. Thank you guys. Oh, thank you. I love that I'm on Twitch too. This is so cool. I've never done it before, and I want to do it more often. This is fun. I love just getting to animate with you guys and help out. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing this more often, especially when I have, like right now, over the next month or two, I have a little bit more free time in the mornings. I might have to do it earlier in the morning if I get too busy. So hopefully that's not bad. Like maybe a 5 a.m. Pacific time type of thing. But for short things, 9 a.m. Pacific works for me, like a half hour. So yeah, let me know too if is a half hour enough. I mean, because you don't want to go too long and then it's like too much information, right? So half hour. We got through a lot today, so just give me some feedback, maybe on on social media somewhere, wherever you're following me. Just give me some feedback and let me know if there's ways to make this better. I really appreciate it, guys. I gotta go. I gotta get ready for work. So thank you so much. And yeah, I guess we'll see you guys later. Bye.